Now that you have your mug done, it's time to start glazing. So, with the glazing, I have an example mug here. But we are going to, you can see I'm standing in front of the table here, right beside the wheel. These are the glazes. Not to be confused by the acrylic paint that is over there. That is acrylic paint. You get out of the shot there, you can get a nice clear view. You always know the acrylic paint by the pumps on the top. If you acrylic paint your project, then we're not going to be able to fire it. And remember, the glazing portion of this is what makes these mugs fully functional. So if we don't glaze it, we acrylic paint it, we can't actually put liquids in it. You glaze it and we glaze fire it, you can put liquids in it. You can put it in the microwave, you can put it in the dishwasher, you can do all of those things. Here are the glazes. Now when you come up here, you're going to choose a color. I have a color right here. This is a blue color. You can see that by its blue color. The bottle is blue and it has a word down there, a name, Blue Yonder. Now we know it's blue, again, because the jar is blue, but if you really want to know what it looks like after it's been fired, you can look at one of our handy dandy tiles here that shows the different colors and their names underneath. This is after it's been fired. Now it's not going to look like this when you put it on the mug, but after you fire it, this is what it comes out as. Notice how shiny. That's what makes it food safe. So it's going to be shiny and glossy and feel a lot better. This doesn't feel so good when it comes out of the kiln. This feels a lot better. I have two of those tiles. Here's another one with many other colors that you can see there. I also have a couple of random tiles in here that you'll see that these are colors that are going to be, eventually when they run out, they're going to be discontinued. We're not going to buy them again, okay? So because of that, you want to pay attention to see how much we have left before you start using it. Okay, so what you're going to do is you're going to choose your first color you're going to use. Now, there are a few rules you have to follow. Glazing is not painting, so even though we may mention that we're painting, we're not actually painting, we are glazing. And because of that, there are certain rules you have to follow. One, it's not a good idea to overlap the colors of the glaze. So for example, let's say I'm going to make these little flowers on this mug that I had in the beginning. The flowers here a different color than the background. So I'm going to do the background blue and the flowers a red color. So if I'm doing the background or this part of the mug blue, I will do blue all over, and I will work really hard on not getting any blue on the red flower, because the red flower, even though if we put red down here first and then put the blue over top of the red and it looks like we've had that covered up and it's going to overlap it, what will happen in the kiln is those colors will melt together and it won't be something that you want. Sometimes it could make a purplish color, or it could be burnt and brown. We just don't know what happens in the kiln. So I always advise when you're doing this, make sure that you don't overlap the colors together. So each color needs to be separate from the other colors on there. And you can see with a complicated mug that's really nicely sculpted, you're going to have a whole lot of, you're going to need to get a nice skinny brush and get in those details. That's going to make it look really good. Another thing you're going to want to do is make sure you glaze the inside. That's the most important part. When you glaze the inside, that's what makes that food safe. Okay? Here is the palette for which we put the glaze in. Now I'm going to do this, model this so you can see how we do this. I got my blue, I got my palette. Glaze palette, acrylic palette. Okay? Nice and big, has acrylic paint usually all caked over top of it, which is why we don't want to mix these two up. We don't want the acrylic paint and the glaze mixing together. It'll ruin your project. Glaze palette, nice and small. Now you're not even going to use all these spaces. You're usually just going to use one, because what I want you to do is get one bottle at a time. One bottle, one of the palettes. And when you fill this, here's how much you put in. You're going to do just a little bit at a time. So you can see there on inside of that palette, is a little bit of glaze. Now, if you have a bigger space and you're going to use more, maybe get a little bit more. But what you're going to do is you're going to take this to your table, so when you need more, you just keep putting it in there as you need it. We can't take it from here and put it back in here. Okay, you can't take it from the pallet and put it back inside of the jar. You just can't do it really well, so we don't do it. We just make sure we don't waste any of this. Here's an important part. This is the most expensive of the supplies we buy in the art room. Each one of these bottles is about 20 bucks, depending on the color. So we want to make sure we don't waste it at all. Okay, so while you're working on this, make sure you use up all the glaze that you get out of here and you put it on your mug. Now, another rule to follow is that on your mug, you want to do at least 3 layers of each coat. So a layer is putting the glaze on, letting it dry, putting on another coat, which is the second layer, letting it dry, putting on a third, at least. You could do 4, you could do 5, don't do less than 3. If you do less than 3, it becomes streaky, and it doesn't become really thick. For these that you saw earlier, nice and thick there on and nice and bold on the color, I put 4 of each of those on there, especially the blue, okay? And that's what you'll want to do as well. So 3 coats. Make sure you glaze the inside and don't overlap your colors, okay? Now, after you're done, always remember you want to return this back to the box, bring it back up here, so each student that could come up here can find the colors that they need. Make sure you put them back, and you will want to wash out your palette. I just got done washing my palette out. It's nice and clean after I got done using up the glaze. Okay? So to recap, just as I said before, there are a few rules to follow. Rule number 1 is you don't want to overlap the colors. Rule number 2 is that you want to put on at least 3 coats. And rule number 3 is when you are glazing, make sure that you don't waste any of the glaze and you're only using the glaze, pouring out the glaze that you're going to use. And if you have extra glaze out on the palette, use it up. You can add another layer, that's okay. What's not good is washing it down the sink. We want to make sure that we don't waste it. All right, have fun glazing.